Hey there. I want to unpack this idea of regret versus shame for a minute. This is a really key understanding, a really key topic to really take in to have a good life. Like if you can really sort this piece out, it has a huge effect on your whole life. So let's start breaking this down for a little minute. So, we're human, so humans mess up. It's totally what we do. Maybe we didn't learn good skills for communicating. Maybe sometimes we drink too much coffee and get highly reactive, or, we're in a very stressful time. And so we're having a stressful day, and then someone comes to communicate something, or our kid needs something, or whatever, and we blow up. Whatever, it happens, right? It happens. We're all human. And so when we mess up, we have this moment where we have this decision that we can make. We can feel regret, or we can feel shame. And I really see there's kind of only two pathways: regret, shame. Regret, shame. Which one are we going to pick? And is a really key. This place right here, this decision of regret versus shame, has a huge implication on all of your relating going forward with this person, and all of the relating that you do in your other relationships. So let's dive into this a little bit, because regret allows us to know where we need to improve in our lives so that we can have more happiness. We can regret a decision that we made, like maybe we take a certain job and move, and then a year later go, wow, this is sucking. This is not what I thought it was going to be at all. I really regret that I took this job and that I moved. And so then we can come up with a new plan. We can either move back or take a different job or whatever it is, right? But we can have regret. We can feel like, yeah, that was not a great decision. And that's not an end of the life thing, right? Like, oh my God. We don't have to get dramatic and suffering about it. We can just go, oh, that was really not a good decision. And we can regret that. That's like navigating our own lives and what works in our lives. It helps us to know what our boundaries are, what our standards are for living. And then we can have regret or shame around ways that we navigate our personal relationships and how we communicate with people, or just something that we do, like maybe we accidentally wash someone's favorite sweater in the washing machine and it shrinks so it would fit a toddler. And then we have this moment, regret versus shame, holding up the little tiny sweater, like, I know this is this special thing that you got on your trip to Ireland, like whatever it was, right? So in the instance of regret, we could say, oh, I'm really sorry. Oh my gosh, I did not know that sweater was in there, or I saw it and it didn't compute. I am so, so sorry. Because sometimes there's not even anything you can do to make it better, right? Shame would go, I didn't see that sweater in there. I don't know how that happened. You just stick it back in the person's drawer and they have no idea. But now, see, because you've made a shame choice, now you got to hide, right? Because shame hides things. So it's going to take that situation and put it in like a hard little box or hard little ball. I see it as like a little orb of hard thick wall. And then that gets stuffed down in your body somewhere, because shame that we feel taps into other shame that we feel. And so if there's a lot of little orbs down in there, it's going to feel overwhelming to open that up, right? If we don't have the ability to feel regret, and we only have really practice at feeling shame, if we don't cultivate that ability to feel regret, which we can, it's a skill that we can develop. If we're stuck in that shame piece, then we're just going to keep stuffing those little orbs of shame and story inside. And then we're going to like clench our butt around it, or tighten our psoas around it, or stick it in our intestines where it's going to affect our digestion. So the way I think it works is that we end up holding those places, holding those stories and those experiences in our body, and keep trying to pack things around it so that we can't feel how bad that feels. And also so that others don't see what we deeply might believe is the terrible, horrible truth of who we are, which isn't really the truth at all. It's just that we don't know. We don't know maybe the glorious radiance of who we are on the inside. And so if we have all these shame orbs in our bodies and in our minds and our brains, then we're going to keep wanting to suppress them. And so again, here's what happens, right? We stuff, we don't want to take responsibility, we don't really apologize. We might go, oh, sorry, that's not a real apology. You've had this experience, I'm sure, where someone apologizes and you're like, is that a real apology? Do they actually really care? Or are they just doing the thing that because their parent said apologize to your brother or apologize to your sister, and they're like, I'm sorry, they don't mean it, right? Does a person really mean it when they apologize? You can tell if they don't mean it, right? You can tell. And so when we are stuffing with shame, we end up denying that we even did anything in the first place. We're going to hide the sweater, or we're going to pretend like something didn't happen. Be totally surprised that something happened. Well, I don't know how that happened, right? Or we're going to just be like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I never said that. I never did that. There's this denial piece, which then just increases the shame more. So then that denial can turn into even other kind of toxic patterns like projection. And it can turn into other kind of toxic patterns even further, like kind of grandiosity. Like, actually, I'm not full of shame. I'm actually full of awesome. I'm awesome. And then we can become kind of grandiose in wanting to hide in that shame, because shame doesn't want to be felt or seen. Shame doesn't want to be felt or seen. And that right there is also one of the ways to really actually pull up and heal shame and be able to experience regret instead of experiencing shame. Because if you can find a way that you're willing to say, oh, I really messed up. So sorry. Oh, I feel so bad. I'm so sorry, right? Because we can feel, that's empathy. We can feel like, oh, I messed up and that negatively affected you, and I'm really sorry. I feel sorry. I feel like you're hurting. I'm so sorry, right? But if we just go into the shame and are hiding and protecting that story or that experience or ourselves, and then we give the flippant, unreal apology of, oh yeah, sorry, whatever, sorry, we're blocking our ability to feel empathy. It cuts our ability to really, truly relate and connect with the people in our lives. It becomes a block to true intimacy. Because if we're holding shame at a deep level, we're not able to connect fully with the people around us. Right? Because if we're not able to feel regret and we go right to shame, then we're hiding. It's just the way it works. We're hiding behind a wall, and we're not able to truly deeply connect and foster empathy, which then leads us down even more toxic patterns and toxic personality traits. It's such a vicious hole to get down into. And the problem is that some of us learned shame at an early age. We didn't learn, our parents didn't have skill in regret versus shame. They didn't know how to feel regret, or they didn't know how to maybe parent or discipline well. And so maybe we were shamed or humiliated as children or young folks, whatever. Like wherever we pick this up, we pick it up. We're in a culture where we're not encouraged to be our authentic, real selves. And our authentic, real humanity means that we're gonna mess up. We're gonna mess up. So, benefits of regret are that it teaches us, like, the poor habits that we have, and we can look at them, the poor decisions we've made, so we can make better decisions and know, like, oh, that doesn't work for me right now. And it teaches us what works for us what our standards are for our lives, and then it also teaches us what the standards and boundaries are of the people around us so we can make better choices. I'll give you an example from my personal life. A friend of mine came to me. I grew up in a family where there was a lot of sarcasm. And, kids don't know the difference. They don't know sarcasm. They don't get it. I grew up like in New York. It's kind of tough, and a very sarcastic family. There was not a healthy understanding of regret versus shame. There was a lot of stuffing, a lot of hiding. And then, fast forward to just maybe about 15 years ago or so, and a friend of mine was like, sometimes you're really sarcastic, and sometimes that is really painful. And at first I was like, what do you mean? I mean, I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. And then she's like, I know, because you love me and you're my friend. But it doesn't always feel that way. She just did such a beautiful job. And I went, oh, and I felt myself tighten up inside, and my guts all hurt, and I was like, oh. And I was able to just be there a little bit, and I turned a little flush, and then I went, I'm sorry. And then I thought about it, and I sat with it, and I came back to her, and I went, I'm really sorry. I really am sorry that I hurt your feelings, and I'm going to look at that. And I worked really hard. It took me a couple of years to really pull out that kind of toxic sarcasm that had become a part of my personality, but really wasn't the truth of who I am. But I had become really sarcastic. Now, once in a while, I can give a sarcastic joke and still have fun and playful. But I'm very mindful about not doing that at the expense of someone else. I might make fun of myself or whatever, but I'm not going to do that at the expense of someone else. And I had to learn that because that's the humor that I learned, right? So I had to kind of relearn. And so that's one way. Like if I had just gone into shame, I would have been like, well, you're too sensitive. Maybe you need to toughen up, right? That's kind of stuff that I was learned when I was a kid. So that becomes confusing to the people you're relating to. If you go into shame and you don't go, oh, first of all, like I hear you and I hear that your feelings are hurt by my actions, right? And so I'm sorry, And it just happens, right? We mess up. So it's so important. That benefit of regret is that we can look, like I could see her point about the sarcasm, and I could see that actually it probably was affecting all my relationships. I could see that. And I'm so grateful to that person for bringing that up to me. And then the thing is, when we get good at regret, and we can understand that, and we can truly look at ourselves, then we're not afraid. We get to learn more and more about really what we're made of and what's in there. And then we can really look and see, like if someone comes to us with feedback and they're like, you're to this or you're to that, you can go, I'm going to take that into my meditation practice and into my spiritual practice. I'm going to sit with that and see if there's truth in that for me. And then you could sit with it and go, nope, that's not true for me, right? You can make a good decision about, because people are going to give you feedback, right? That's the thing. People are going to give you feedback. You need to be able to feel regret without shame so that you can really receive that feedback well and then decide whether or not it's true. The sarcasm thing, that was totally true. But then, a few years later, someone else came with some feedback and I was like, oh, that's actually not true. Like I went in, I know the truth of who I am. What you're saying is not actually true, and what I think is a projection from your own shame, right? And it's a dance. Like we're in this constant dance, humaning together, being human together, messing up together. And so the more of us that we can really look at this piece of regret versus shame, then the healthier all of our relationships become, and the healthier the whole collective becomes, right? So I wanted to really talk about this piece. This is something that we're working with in the second week of the NEST program, the Neural Emotional Stability Training. So we're going to dive into this. We're going to do some specific practices designed to release toxic shame from our energy bodies and from our physical bodies, from our chakras and our energy centers, as well as just like so that we're not holding on to that. We're going to go into looking a little bit about what are the core beliefs that bring us to wanting to kind of cordoning off these stories and putting them in the shame pile, as opposed to really being able to feel regret. So we're going to work through some of these pieces in the nest. So we're going to drop the link to the nest, the neural emotional stability training, in the comment. It starts on Sunday. So if you're interested, feel free to send some questions. But I wanted to point this out because it's really key for humaning well. So I'm Kat Matlock here at Free Body. Thanks so much. Take care.